What is going on, legend riders, and welcome back to Sam's Bikes. And today marks 860 days on the Amflow PL Carbon. And to celebrate, we've come to the beautiful Aínsa, Spain to ride some amazing single track. And in this video, we're going to talk about the past, so the last 860 days on the Amflow and how I've found it, to the present, and then we're going to have a little glimpse at the future and what might be coming. And before we head out to the trails, a massive shout out to Pablo.
Hey mate.
The all-round legend, taking a few days off to come and ride. He's the cameraman. He's also doing some epic follow cam of me. And he's also been riding an Amflow as well. And a massive shout out to Paco from eBike Waterama for lending Pablo the bike. And also massive shout out to Topic, the long-term sponsor at Sam's Bikes. Without Topic, Sam's Bikes is not possible, full stop. Amazing tools, shock pumps, all-round products. I highly recommend them. Now, Pablo, let's get out to the trails, mate.
Let's go.
Let's go. Okay, it is a beautiful day out here in Ainsa. And unfortunately, riders, getting all the camera gear together, I forgot to wear my knee pads, so I'm gonna take it a little bit easy. Okay, so first up, the past. And how have I got my hands on an Amflow 860 days ago? Well, I got an interesting email asking if I'd want to test it. And I said, of course. And it actually arrived at my house in, oh, this is pretty nice. It actually arrived at my house in August 2023. As a frame kit, I built it up with some absolute killer parts. Obviously, I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And actually looked through my photos from on my iPhone. I didn't even take any photos of it because, like, I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And I was doing some private testing, as I think quite a lot of the other YouTubers that you watch were doing as well. And let me tell you, riders, the first one, the first Amflow really was not good. The frame was really stiff. The motor really wasn't great. We had wide remotes. I had a few issues, and it just, oh, look at that. It just wasn't amazing. Then let's fast forward to a year forward at Eurobike. So I was getting on the plane to go to Eurobike a day early because I knew the Amflow was going to be released. And I was reading the press release. And the first thing I read was 1,000 watts of peak power and 120 newton meters of torque and 19.2 kilos. I mean, that was absolute game-changing statistics for the time, and still is. And when I arrived at Eurobike, there was so much hype behind the bike. You know, everyone was talking about it. And I even saw major brand managers from major companies lining up to test the bike. You know, there was a queue for I reckon maybe 3 or 4 hours. And I was lucky enough to go and have the first test. I went and tested it on the Saturday, and that video absolutely blew up on my channel. I think we got 100,000 views in a few weeks, or close enough. And it was very obvious there was a lot of people interested in this bike. And I can see why. Look at this, how it just eats up this climb. There's not many bikes on the market that can just chew this stuff up. This is loose, a bit greasy, and steep. And the Amflow just absolutely eats it up. And check out that view up there. Ainsa is completely turning it on. How beautiful. And then I was lucky enough to go take the Amflow home with me and do my review. Spent a month on the bike, and if you haven't seen that review, it's definitely worth watching. But the Cliff Notes riders, what a fantastic trail bike. And the Avinox motor and system, quite frankly, just made all the competitors at the time look a little bit outdated. And then, if you know the channel, you know I went on to do a dream build, custom painted, the bike I'm riding right now, the best of the best parts, and you know, it's killer. If you haven't seen that video, it's one of my best dream builds I've ever done. And you know, I often get the question, what is the best upgrade for the Amflow I've done? Well, hands down, it has to be the coil on the back. I'm running, I think it's a 450 coil, an Ollins 450, and it just transformed the bike. And also, I run it as a mullet. Now, the mullet doesn't change it that much because the flip chip doesn't change the length of the chainstay, but it definitely makes it more playful, and it definitely, for my style of riding, I like it better. And then at this year's Eurobike, there was 9 new Avinox e-bikes. You know, we had the Rottweiler, the Crestline, the Commensal, the Cruise, the Forbidden. So it's fair to say that Amflow and Avinox have exploded onto the market in the last, you know, year and a half. And I might steal the words from Steve Jones, is the honeymoon over? So now to the present. First of all, have I had any fails? No, 0 fails. The only thing I have broken is the charging port when I was building the dream build, but that was like user error, I'm pretty sure. No fails with the motor, nothing wrong with the frame, pretty much perfect. And I haven't heard any major issues either. You know, people on the internet love to talk when things go bad, but I haven't seen really anything on any of the forums. And how have the majors responded? So we've seen a power increase from Specialized, we've seen a power increase by Bosch. You know, I kind of see the motor market in 2025 looks a bit like this. Shimano's gone. You know, Shimano's really not competitive at the moment. And also, I think the brands and the consumers have lost confidence in that motor and system. People have been burnt, and I don't think they're going to go there again. I think it's quite interesting because Bosch has really owned the market for like probably the last 2 or 3 years. I see Bosch now definitely in 3rd place behind Specialized and Avinox. And I think obviously Avinox, it has the most power, and Specialized I think has a bit more tunability, and I really love the dynamic micro tune from Specialized. I think both their systems are really sitting on top. Let's talk about the increase in power. So Avinox were first with the 1000 watts, and then we've seen Bosch go to 750, we've seen Specialized go to 720, and we've just seen Giant come out with 800. Now, I personally think I don't need 1000 watts of peak power, but I'm 85 kilos. You know, you look at Nico, we'll slow him down here, right? It's very greasy on these rocks. Look at Nico, my mate, who is about 100 kilos. Sorry, Nico, but it is true. He's also not the fittest guy out there. He does need 1000 watts. He had to go of the Avinox, and he was blown away at the power. I think it's case per case, and I don't think it should be about peak power. I think it should be about the 25K limit, and it doesn't really matter how fast you get to that limit. And now let's talk about one more thing in the present. How do I think the consumer confidence is in Amflow and Avinox? Well, I think in the beginning, you know, people didn't know about them. Brand new to the bike industry and the motor industry. But I think fast forward 18 months, you know, it's a pretty known brand now. Anyone that's looking at getting an e-bike, I think, is definitely looking at the Amflow. So it's worth noting Amflow has a Facebook group, which has like 25 or 26,000 members, which is kind of crazy. I'm sure they're not all owners, but it's a lot of people interested in the brand, that's for sure. And have they done everything right? Well, definitely not. You know, like, first bike, first motor. I would have loved to have seen a range extender come in, because it is reasonably easy to get a bit whiskey throttle on the boost and the turbo and smoke through your battery. The range is good, but it's also you can burn through the battery if you want to. So I'd love to see a range extender. I'd also love to see more models in the lineup. I'd love to see maybe not an enduro bike, but a more enduro build. You know, kind of more like how I've made mine. Tough wheels, coil on the back, maybe 38s or Zebs, you know, something like that. And maybe like a model in between the base and the pro, and some more colors, you know. And also the application. I'd be lying to say I exactly understand how to get the best from the motor. You have a lot of options. There's a lot of tunability, but also the sliders aren't completely open for you to tune it the way you want. I think someone, maybe myself, in the future, should do like a deep dive on exactly how the app works and how to get the most out of the motor for different styles of riding. Yeah, so there is room for improvement, but saying that, you know, I can't think of any other brand that has done as good in their first release. And now I'll give a little bit of love to Aínsa. So where is Aínsa? Well, Aínsa is about 4.5 hours north. Oh, we've got a nice little climb here. 4.5 hours north of Barcelona in the Spanish Pyrenees. Super beautiful place, as you'll see today. And I've wanted to come here for like 12 years. It's very embarrassing I haven't been here. We've been here a day and a half. I've been super impressed. And right, so if you think you're doing a Spanish holiday, definitely Aínsa is worth checking out. So as I said, I've wanted to come here quite a few times, and it's happened. This is the first time we got here, and we worked a fair bit of the trip, but had a great time. Trails are great. Trails are rideable for everyone. I wouldn't say they're super gnarly trails. Gnarly to ride fast, but I think most levels could ride them. More sort of trail bike sort of territory. You don't need a big bike, so perfect territory for the Amflow. And the hotel, $100 a night, but costing like beer index, like 3 or 4 euros a beer. Dinner, about 20 euros a head. So quite an affordable place to come. How long you want to come for? I'd say 3 to 5 days. It's a beautiful place, and the old town is stunning. You know, it's definitely a nice place to come, maybe with a camper van, with your wife or girlfriend, and spend, you know, a week here. And now we're coming down to one of the last downhills, and it's time to talk about the future of Amflow and the Avinox motor and system. And what a beautiful place to do so. All right, first up, I've heard from a couple of riders out there that they think the Amflow bikes are going to disappear in the next couple of years because they really only produced this bike, this company, to show off the Avinox motor and system, and then when the mainstream brand started using it, it would probably go away. I completely disagree with this. You know, I think that Amflow's here to stay. I've never seen so much buzz in the industry over the Amflow bikes, obviously because it's got the Avinox motor and system, but also coming very well equipped bikes starting at 6,500 and the weight. I don't think they're going anywhere. And what about the Avinox motor? Well, I think if you ask any experienced e-bike rider in 2025 what motor they want, I think a lot of them are going to say the Avinox motor. And then at this year's Eurobike, we saw 9 new e-bikes. And I think in 2026, we're going to see some major players swapping from the Bosch system to the Avinox. And then looking further ahead, I think like late 2026, 2027, we're probably going to see the Avinox motor take over as the most popular, most sold e-bike motor on the market. That's just my thoughts. Riders, what do you think? And lucky last, when are we going to see an upgrade from Amflow or the Avinox motor? Well, I think we're definitely going to see a generation 2 of both motor and bikes. When are we going to see that? I have no idea, riders. You know, but if we look at the past, so in 2023, I tested the original, like the mule that didn't go to market, and it wasn't great. Fast forward a year to Eurobike 2024, and they made so many improvements over the first bike I tested in 2023. It was crazy. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see an upgrade. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a big improvement over this, which is going to be, you know, very difficult for the engineers to do because this is already an incredible bike and system. But yeah, the future looks very bright for Amflow and Avinox. And there you go, riders. That is 860 days on the Amflow with the Avinox motor and system. I hope you enjoyed this beautiful video in Ainsa. And like always, if you have any questions on the bike or the motor or anything else e-bike related, put it in the comments. I love to help. And you know it, stay safe out there. We're going to see you soon.